My name is Olivia Wilson, 28, and for the last 3 years I had believed in something that now feels like a fragile illusion. I had met James Smith when my life was simple but stagnant, and his was promising yet uncertain. I had invested not just love, but time, energy, and resources into building a shared life with him, supporting his career, helping him pursue his ambitions, and believing that what we were creating together was a partnership. On our 3rd anniversary, I had planned a quiet evening, a small but meaningful celebration, a dinner at the restaurant he had mentioned months ago, a simple sapphire necklace I had bought for him to mark the day, a handwritten note expressing everything I felt. My heart was full of hope. And then at 7:15 p.m., my phone buzzed. 7 words. That was all it took to shatter everything. I found someone else. I want nothing more to do with you. The text was from James. No explanation, no apology, just a severing of the tie we had woven together over years. I stared at it, stunned. My first reaction was a wave of panic, a dozen frantic questions I would never send. Why? How? Was it something I did? But the panic dissolved into something colder, a quiet clarity. He had made his choice. He had drawn his line. I replied simply, "As you wish." Then I did something even more deliberate. I turned my attention from heartbreak to action. If James had ended the partnership, I would protect myself. I began severing all financial and material ties that I had maintained in good faith. The apartment, the car, the subscriptions, the credit cards. I methodically removed his name from everything, paused automatic payments, changed passwords, and ensured that nothing I had provided would be manipulated against me. Each action was precise, unemotional, and necessary. I felt the strange weight of empowerment mixed with emptiness. Love had left me, but control over my life was returning. I thought the ordeal would end there. I had acted calmly, clearly, and legally. But then Riley appeared, a storm in human form, James's new girlfriend, a woman I would soon realize was as cunning as she was bold. Riley wasted no time. Within days of James' text, she began testing boundaries, probing, threatening, insinuating herself into the spaces I had carefully maintained. At first, it was subtle. Ambiguous messages, questions about possessions, hints that she might need my compliance. But soon, her presence became a direct challenge, a challenge to my possessions, my boundaries, and my peace of mind. The emotional impact of this new betrayal was sharp, cutting deeper than James's initial abandonment. It wasn't just a breakup anymore. It was a coordinated intrusion, a demonstration of audacity and entitlement. And I realized something crucial. Love and trust could be betrayed, but integrity and agency could not be taken without consent. As I sat in my apartment that night, the city lights filtering through the blinds, I reflected on the lessons I was learning in real time: clarity in crisis, measured action, and the importance of protecting oneself. James' abandonment was devastating, yes, but Riley's interference revealed the next challenge, one that would test not just my emotional resilience, but my ability to reclaim control in the face of calculated chaos. This was only the beginning. The storm was forming, and I could feel it coming. Dark, persistent, and unavoidable. But Olivia Wilson, I reminded myself, was not a woman who could be bullied or undone. I would respond, not with rage, but with strategy. And so, as the city hummed around me, I prepared for the confrontation that was already inevitable. The next phase of this betrayal would not be private heartbreak. It would be a battle of boundaries, possessions, and reputation, and I intended to meet it head-on. The days after James' message were a whirlwind of methodical action. My grief existed, yes, but it was tempered by purpose. Every bank account, credit card, lease, and subscription tied to him or the life I had supported was reviewed, recalibrated, or terminated. The apartment lease was in my name. I invoked the break clause, accepted the penalty, and documented every step. The car, co-signed and in my name, had its automatic payments paused. Credit cards were updated, subscriptions canceled, profiles removed. Netflix, Spotify, boutique gym memberships, even the meal kit deliveries, they all went. Every small tether to the life that no longer existed was severed. It was painful in its precision, a mix of relief and sorrow. I thought I had ended the ordeal, but Riley had already begun her campaign. The first message came quietly, a polite-sounding email from her attorney, a man named Mr. Green, claiming that my abrupt cessation of support had caused significant professional and emotional hardship for Riley. The text was formal, intimidating, and veiled with legalese. She was trying to paint me as a villain, but I refused to rise to her narrative. Instead, I contacted my own lawyer, Mr. Phillips, a seasoned professional who had guided my father through business contracts for years. After reviewing the email, he leaned back and said dryly, "It appears, Ms. Foster, that you've encountered a new species of predator." His humor did little to mask the seriousness. Riley's letter demanded transitional support, continued rent, car payments, even a parting sum of money, threatening litigation if I refused. Mr. Phillips assured me it was nothing more than an opportunistic bluff. Legally, Riley had no claim. She had never contributed to shared assets, had no contractual rights, and had willingly chosen to insert herself into James' life. I let him handle it. I did not reply to Riley or James directly. I did not respond to threats, pleas, or insinuations. Instead, I documented everything, kept detailed records, and allowed Mr. Phillips to manage the correspondence. My calm was deliberate. This was no longer personal. This was strategy, precision, control. Yet the pressure mounted. James, who had been silent since his initial text, began to meddle as well. He attempted to justify Riley's intrusion, offering excuses, suggesting that Olivia shouldn't be so harsh, that my actions were disproportionate. But I recognized this for what it was, an attempt to guilt me into compliance. I refused to engage. Boundaries had been drawn, and they would not be crossed. Internally, the emotional storm persisted. I had supported, loved, and trusted. I had believed in a shared future, and now I was forced to protect that past from being weaponized against me. Every letter, every message from Riley and James felt like a test. Could I maintain my composure under their manipulations? Could I assert my rights while controlling my own emotions? I could, and I did. By the end of the week, it was clear. Riley's threats were hollow, and James's interference was ineffective. I had taken control of my finances, my property, and my life. I had drawn lines that could not be crossed, and yet I knew the next challenge would come. The direct confrontation. Riley would attempt intrusion, claiming entitlement, trying to assert dominance over what was mine. The stage was set, the legal groundwork was laid, the players were positioned, and I, Olivia Wilson, was ready, not just to defend my property and my rights, but to assert my narrative, my dignity, and my agency in a world where betrayal and audacity often masquerade as power. The storm had begun, and it would be up to me to navigate it with unwavering clarity. Saturday arrived gray and tense, a mirror to the storm brewing inside me. Today was the scheduled move-out, and I knew Riley and James would not leave quietly. My apartment, my possessions, my carefully maintained boundaries, all were now the target of their audacity. The movers called at 9:45 a.m. "Ms. Foster, Riley and James are here. They say their lawyer is running late but want to start." My stomach tightened. I immediately instructed the movers to allow access only to the items on the approved inventory list. No exceptions. Nothing would leave without legal oversight. As expected, Riley and James began their performance. Riley's voice rang through the lobby, high and incredulous. "You can't just take everything. This is my internship portfolio, my life's work. You're ruining me." James, by her side, tried to justify her claims, as though his presence alone lent her words authority. They gestured, argued, and even attempted to manipulate the movers into compliance. But the lead mover, calm and authoritative, intercepted every attempt. "Only items on the inventory list will be moved. Put everything else down," he said firmly. Riley tried tears, fake outrage, and pleading, but each attempt was countered with quiet, methodical enforcement. James argued, threatened, and tried to sway the movers emotionally, but their training and legal instructions left no room for manipulation. Finally, Mr. Phillips arrived. He didn't raise his voice. He simply produced the receipts and documentation proving that every piece of furniture, every item of value, was mine. He reminded them that their attempts to take anything beyond the approved boxes could be considered theft and would be reported immediately. Defeated and furious, Riley and James gathered only the boxes they were legally permitted to take and left behind scuffed walls, trash, and the tangible remnants of their entitlement. Watching them go, I felt no elation, only relief. The ordeal had been intense, but it had also reinforced something profound: my ability to enforce boundaries, protect myself, and act decisively, even in the face of audacity. Yet the challenges were far from over. Riley had already begun manipulating the public narrative, crafting social media posts that portrayed me as controlling, unkind, even cruel. She sought to weaponize perception, to turn friends, colleagues, and the wider world against me. But the real power, I realized, did not lie in retaliation. It lay in composure, in precision, and in allowing truth to surface naturally. Every action I had taken, legal, financial, and strategic, was documented. Every interaction had witnesses. The foundation of reality was on my side, even if perception needed guidance. The storm of confrontation had passed, leaving me standing amidst the wreckage, not broken, but steady. The battle for my space, my property, and my autonomy had been won, quietly, without drama, without compromise. Foreshadowing, Riley's attempts to manipulate perception were only beginning. The next challenge would be social and reputational, a test of truth, influence, and patience. But I was ready. Olivia Wilson was no longer merely reactive. She was deliberate, aware, and prepared to reclaim not just her possessions, but her narrative. Once the physical confrontation was behind me, a new kind of challenge emerged. One I could not touch, not with legal documents or movers: perception. Riley, unrestrained by reality or responsibility, took to social media. She painted herself as a heroic survivor, escaping a controlling, abusive relationship, casting me as the villain. Finally escaping a financially abusive and controlling relationship, so grateful for those showing me what real support looks like. Survivor. Her post was designed to wound, to manipulate public opinion, and to create chaos in my life. It worked, initially. Friends, acquaintances, even some colleagues paused, questioning what they thought they knew. The narrative Riley tried to sell was seductive, painted in bold strokes, emotionally charged, and utterly false. But truth has a stubborn way of asserting itself. Leslie, a junior curator at the gallery where Riley had interned, had witnessed Riley's lavish lifestyle firsthand and knew the reality of the situation. Quietly, she began sharing context with her colleagues: that Riley had lived extravagantly without a job, had abandoned commitments, and had attempted to weaponize me in public perception. The ripple effect was immediate. What Riley intended as a story of empowerment and victimhood began to crumble under scrutiny. Those who knew the truth quietly corrected the narrative, sharing evidence and context that undermined Riley's claims. Her professional credibility began to erode. The gallery director, valuing integrity above all, quietly communicated that Riley's position as an intern was no longer sustainable. James's presence only amplified the drama. By supporting Riley's narrative, he revealed the fragility of their alliance. Their combined attempts at manipulation, intimidation, and deception began to backfire. The very people Riley had hoped to influence now saw the situation clearly, and her credibility, and by extension, James's, suffered. Meanwhile, I remained silent publicly. I did not confront, argue, or retaliate on social media. Instead, I focused on reclaiming control over my life, clearing the apartment, donating the furniture, paying penalties, and resuming routines. Work, dinners with my brother, quiet evenings, all were small acts of reclaiming peace. The storm of social manipulation raged around me, but I watched from a distance, confident in the integrity of my actions. The lesson was clear. Power is not always in confrontation. Sometimes it lies in restraint, in documentation, and in allowing the truth to surface naturally. Riley and James had acted boldly, trying to distort reality and intimidate me emotionally and socially. But their efforts, built on falsehoods and entitlement, were unsustainable. By the end of the week, the social tide began to turn. Riley's attempt to slander me publicly faltered. Her reputation began to show cracks. Her career prospects threatened, and the credibility she had tried to fabricate for herself started to dissolve. Meanwhile, I moved forward, not vengeful, not triumphant, but steady, composed, and aware. The next and final chapter would bring closure, legal matters finalized, social narrative corrected, and personal restoration completed. The storm had passed, but the calm, deliberate reclamation of my life was still unfolding. With the social narrative and legal battles behind me, a profound sense of calm settled in. The chaos Riley and James had tried to impose, the legal threats, the move-out drama, the attempts to manipulate perception, had finally dissipated. The apartment was cleared, the furniture donated, the lease penalty paid. Every loose end, meticulously documented, was resolved. Legally, Mr. Phillips ensured there would be no further harassment. Riley's attempts at defamation were countered with formal notices, and James's interventions were rendered irrelevant. The storm of intimidation had been contained, leaving only the quiet, powerful clarity of justice served, not through aggression, but through restraint, preparation, and principle. Yet the most profound restoration was internal. I reflected on the years I had invested, the love, support, and trust I had offered to James. The betrayal had been deep, but it revealed something essential about me: resilience, discernment, and the capacity to act decisively under pressure. I had learned that supporting someone did not mean sacrificing myself, and that boundaries were not just protective, they were empowering. Leslie, the junior curator who had quietly helped expose the truth, reached out with a simple, heartfelt message. "I hope you're doing okay. Things were messy after Riley left, but the truth is coming out. You deserve peace." Her words, simple and genuine, reminded me that not everyone is a predator or a manipulator. There are allies, honest people, and those who recognize integrity when they see it. James and Riley's manipulations unraveled naturally. Their alliance, built on entitlement and falsehoods, could not withstand reality. James's instability and Riley's audacious attempts at control led to consequences they could not avoid: damaged reputations, professional setbacks, and the collapse of the illusion of power they had tried to impose on me. For me, life returned to its rhythm: work, quiet dinners, routines, and personal growth. The sapphire necklace I had set aside as a gift for James remained a symbol, not of loss, but of survival, learning, and the boundaries I now recognized as essential. The anger faded, leaving only a quiet, steady sense of restored order. In retrospect, the ordeal taught me this: true power is not in control over others, but in control over oneself. Boundaries, integrity, and deliberate action are shields against manipulation and betrayal. Trust can be given, but it must be accompanied by discernment. Support can be offered, but not at the cost of one's own stability. Riley and James disappeared from my life, their drama no longer my concern. I focused on my business, my growth, and the relationships that mattered, built on respect, honesty, and shared values. For the first time in months, I felt fully at peace. This chapter closed not with vengeance, not with spectacle, but with restoration. Olivia Wilson, 28, had reclaimed her life, her agency, and her narrative. The storm of betrayal had passed, leaving lessons learned, boundaries fortified, and a quiet, unshakable strength. The story ends here, not with triumph over others, but with the reclamation of self, integrity, and the life I chose to live on my own terms.